Before you can start writing Visual Basic programs, you need to install the Visual Studio development environment. In this lesson, I'll describe the different versions of Visual Studio that are available and show you where to download Visual Studio. Visual Studio is a tool that lets you build programs using Visual Basic, C#, C++, and other programming languages. It includes powerful editing and debugging tools that make building Visual Basic applications relatively quick and painless. Visual Studio comes with a large integrated library called the Dotnet Framework that provides tools necessary to run Visual Basic applications. When you run a Visual Basic program, the framework translates your code into something the computer can understand and then makes the computer run it. The framework also includes powerful tools for adding advanced features to your programs. For example, it includes tools for graphics, cryptography, database programming, asynchronous processing, and much more. The .NET Framework is so tightly integrated into Visual Studio that you usually don't need to know whether you're using a tool provided by the framework or one provided by Visual Basic. Normally it makes little difference, so I'll rarely make the distinction. To begin installing Visual Studio, open your favorite browser and search for Visual Studio. This first link at the top to visualstudio.com/downloads leads to information about all of the different Visual Studio editions. Let me open that new link so I can give you an overview of what the different editions do. You'll notice that I'm seeing Visual Studio 2013 editions here. If you're watching this course later and newer editions are available, don't worry about it. Just pick the most recent version. New Visual Studio releases are usually very compatible with the older versions, so you should be able to easily work through the examples I describe in this course. All of the versions of Visual Studio are basically the same. Some of them just have fewer project templates or have specific features turned on or off. This top section provides information about free trials of the more expensive editions. You can click one of these to get more information or to start the installation process. These editions are really intended for professional developers working in programming groups, and they provide far more features than you really need to learn Visual Basic, so I recommend that you skip them for now. If you scroll down a bit farther, you'll see the Express editions. These are free versions of Visual Studio that have fewer features than the versions shown above, but they are all powerful development environments. Each edition is targeted to a specific kind of development and doesn't include project templates for the other kinds. For example, the first one, Visual Studio Express 2013 for Web, doesn't include templates for building desktop applications. The non-Express editions include all of the templates, in addition to other tools that are useful for professional developers. As I just mentioned, the Visual Studio Express 2013 for Web lets you build web applications. Visual Studio Express 2013 for Windows lets you build applications with the new Windows tablet style, and that can be posted in the Windows App Store. This kind of application uses WPF, which stands for Windows Presentation Foundation. It also uses XAML, which is pronounced XAML, and which stands for Extended Application Markup Language. WPF and XAML provide windows and controls that let you build some really beautiful and engaging applications. Let me skip the next option, Visual Studio Express 2013 for Windows Desktop for now. I'll come back to it in a few minutes. Visual Studio Team Foundation Server Express is a source code control and project management tool. It's most useful when you're working with a project team. Visual Studio Express 2012 for Windows Phone lets you build Windows Phone applications. Like the Windows Desktop edition, it uses WPF and XAML to build applications. Building applications for the phone is a lot of fun, but involves a fair number of extra details that would distract you from learning Visual Basic, so I'm not going to use that edition for this course. Now back to Visual Studio Express 2013 for Windows Desktop. This version lets you use Windows Forms to build applications that run on the desktop. I find building Windows Forms applications a lot easier than building applications with WPF and XAML. So for this course, I'm going to use this edition. This will let me concentrate more on the Visual Basic language than on WPF and XAML. After you understand Visual Basic, you can go back and download the other versions of Visual Studio and learn WPF and XAML if you so choose. Notice this DreamSpark link down here at the bottom. It says that if you're a student, you can get Visual Studio Professional Edition at no cost. If you are a student, click the link and you can get the Professional Edition if you like. Before you install Visual Studio Express for Windows Desktop, you should verify that your computer meets its requirements. If you expand the information for that edition, you'll find a System Requirements link. If you click that link, you can find extra information about all of the Visual Studio Express products. Let me scroll down to the desktop version. Here you can see that your computer must be running one of the newer Windows operating systems. It should also have at least 1 GB of RAM and 5 GB of free disk space. If you're looking for a new computer, I highly recommend that you don't skimp here. Visual Studio is a big program and it uses a lot of memory and disk space. More memory is always better. My computer has 8 gigabytes of memory and a huge disk, and it handles Visual Studio quite well. After you've verified that your computer can handle it, go back to the download page and install Visual Studio Express for Windows Desktop. Click the DVD5 ISO link if you want to put the installation material on a DVD for later installation. If you want to begin the installation now, click Install Now. Get the installation started and go get a cup of coffee because it will take a while. After you finish the installation, run the next video in this course and we can start building Visual Basic applications.